Welcome to the Greenspace Site Improvement Project by the Lee Brothers at Sharon Baptist Church. We'll be going over our project overview. We'll be covering four main areas. We'll be covering the plan, the purpose, the project cost, and the projection. First of all, the plan is going to cover three main areas. The first area will be recreation, the second area will be community, and the third area will be parking. If you look at the next image, what it shows is a general outline of the project site with the white outline square. That shows where the project site will be. If you look at the shed and you go about 20 or 30 feet, and then you look to the right, you will see the project site is actually already marked out on the ground and everything. So that is where the site is located. The next few are just example images. They show ways that the green space could actually be used. The first is the recreational value. As you can see, this is an outdoor exercise class where they are stretching. It can also be used for other type of classes just to help people stay fit. So you can see it can be used for adults. And then the next slide also shows how it could be used in another way for kids. For like a fun day. If we were to host a fun day, the green space could be used for youth activities. The next slide, we see this would be similar to a harvest rally. As you can see, there are tents, and if you want to do any events with vendors, this is an example of how that space could be used for people to gather and socialize together. And then the last image is a model of what it would look like at our church for adding the parking spaces. The actual purpose, we have three categories for that as well. And number one would be to create a safe entry and exit of the facility so that law enforcement and emergency services can get out in the case of an emergency. We also would like to create outdoor flex spaces, as we said, so it has multiple purposes. And then also we want to create 40 more parking spaces, which would satisfy our requirements for our maximum parking capacity. Also, I'd like to go into a little bit of the history of the church. As you know, looking at these images, you can see that the top left image is the original church building that was built. And then on the right is the new church building. If you know a little bit about our history, the church actually did have a fire in January of 1950. In 1952, the church was rebuilt and is the church that we presently worship in today. Obviously, the founders, the pioneers, and the builders of this church had faith and saw the need to build the church to hold nearly 200 people. So our goal today is to add to that original vision that God gave our forefathers. And as you know, Sharon actually has one of the largest sanctuaries in the Northern Neck Baptist Association, which is going to lead us to our next slide as we looked at some churches within the Northern Neck Baptist Association area. And these are examples of churches that have either expanded or did improvements to their parking lot for overflow parking. The top left image is an example of Jerusalem Baptist Church in Hague, Virginia. As you can see, they have a grass overflow parking lot that they use for overflow services. The top right corner is a project that was done by Willie Chapel Baptist Church. They did add on to their facility in about 2009 to 2010 as a gravel parking lot. And then the bottom right image is an example in Farnham, Virginia, for the Mount Zion Baptist Church, who added asphalt parking lot. The next slide shows the reasons and some of the issues that need to be addressed for the overflow parking aspect of the project. As you can see in the overflow parking scenario, 1A shows that people have to park across the street and then cross a very dangerous road. People actually drive very fast on that road, so it's really just not a safe situation for people in that scenario. 1B, we also have people parked on the slope. There are white markers that indicate where people should park, and these cars in 1B are actually parked beyond that, are actually pretty close to the road. If you have a close-up shot of it that you see in like 1C. And also other part of 1C is that one of the vehicles is actually parked in the cemetery area. If you look closely where that green arrow is, that vehicle is actually parked in the cemetery. And then 1D, there are concerns about, if an ambulance could actually safely enter and exit the site. So those are some of the concerns that we have and the issues for providing overflow parking.
So just want to give some stats here. Church attendance ranges from about 43 people at the lowest to 133 at the highest. All right, so we want to let you know that this space, this parking green space, is more for overflow parking. It's not for your typical Sunday morning services, but it's going to be for the other events. So weddings, funerals, Mother's Day, Easter, homecoming, and Northern Neck Baptist Association. All right, so for the Northern Neck Baptist Association, the church's overflow parking plan for that week-long event was to paint the parking lot. And you see that there are white dots currently on the parking lot, and then start moving people to the cemetery grounds. All right, the problem with that is that this space will not always be available for that purpose. All right, so also for funerals, the burial grounds at the church is one of the biggest contributors causing a need for overflow parking. Based on cemetery records dating back on the early 1900s, the busiest year on record was 14 burials in a year. Now let's do some simple math. There are 52 weeks in a year. Of those 52 weeks, if there is the possibility that there could be 14 burials plus one Mother's Day service, one Easter service, one homecoming service, one wedding, one joint service with Mount Vernon, and then also evening programs with the Northern Neck Baptist Association, there are potentially 21 weeks out of 52 weeks in the year that could need overflow parking at the max peak. All right, so that is around about 40%. So we think that the parking lot being used 40% of the time during a year outside of typical Sunday service is a significant number.
This project will cost about $5,500 to clear the site, and then an additional $500 for seed and straw. But we want everyone to know that this project is actually fully funded. And we're going to talk a little bit about our donor network, also about the cost that we actually save and some of the time that we put into this project, and also the cost benefits. How it will benefit the cost, how it will benefit the church in the short term as well as in the long term. The next slide, what we did, we started by looking at the church budget over the years. We pulled all the budgets that we could find, just to show some of the priorities of the church and the different categories that have been established over time. And you can see the things that the church has invested in and that the church values. So some of those events that we pulled, you can see highlighted. We can see homecoming, we can see revival, the Mount Vernon Fellowship. And so if you look at these things, we feel that, while we do value these things, our actual parking lot does not actually, meet those capacity numbers. So we feel that by expanding that parking lot, it could actually help the church with these events to actually, capitalize on things and actually maximize your capacity. We also wanted to take some time to compare some of past projects or recent projects that have been worked on. As you see on the top left corner, that was a big tree that was next to the addition, bathroom addition of the church. That was actually for around $2,000. Then one of the most recent projects the church took on was the installation of new doors, which ranged at about $8,000. Our project comes in at around $6,000. So that's just to show a little comparison of our project. And then the next slide, we're going to look at not only just the initial cost, but the overall cost of the project over time. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to show a comparison of, what it would take, if you're putting a building on your property versus if you're just utilizing a green space. And, buildings are good, but buildings actually take a lot of maintenance and a lot of things that you have to put into it and repair over time. So what this chart is really trying to show is that when you start building a building, everything is good at the beginning, the first 2 years. You don't have to put too much into it after all of those initial costs have been put into it. But as you go over time, things start to need to be repaired. So you have to start looking at your routine maintenance. Then you also have to look at things that you're going to have to completely replace, and you have to determine what things need to be repaired and what things need to be replaced. But typically with the building, what you're going to be dealing with is your AC unit. How many times has the church had to replace their AC unit in the life of a church? Your roofing is something you're going to have to repair or replace over time. Your carpeting, your windows, your septic system. Even when a building is not being used, or if a building goes out of use, you might have to actually spend money to actually demolish that building so that that's not a safety hazard. So as you can see with a building, there are many things that you have to consider. Versus a green space, there is a very low value at the very beginning, and then over time, it really just is kind of balanced. There's not a lot that you have to do once it's initially cleared, so you're not going to be really worried about heating or cooling your green space. You don't have to roof your green space. You don't have to put carpet on your green space. There are no windows with your green space. If you're not using your green space, it doesn't have to be demolished. So those are some of the things that are associated with the green space, not only for the initial cost, but the overall cost over a 50-year plus span. So the next slide goes over some of the things that we did to save costs on the site. And what we did is, we saw all the debris, and we actually took some time to actually clear that debris out. We did it little by little, but it took us about 4 to 6 months to clear out a lot of that debris. We did almost about 100 bags of leaves, and we also removed sticks and branches and other debris that had collected over time. And what that did for us was it helped us when contractors were able to come out and look at the site. They knew actually what they were looking at, and it just made it very clear, and it knocked down some of the costs because the majority of that had already been done. That's less time they have to take to clear the site to get their equipment on and different things like that. And then also for this current time, if anybody is interested in looking at the site, to be able to show the church what we're actually trying to accomplish, what we're looking at, it makes it clear for the church to know the clearer picture of what is being done here. So that is some cost savings that we did by clearing out that debris.
So these donations were given to us from people that we did ministry with while we were at college. So while I was down in Norfolk, my brother was in Richmond. These people were pretty much friends and just people that we really connected with over time. So throughout, our time with them, we've given money to, various churches, and like I said, really built those connections. So when we came up, kind of thought about the idea of this green space, and we kind of talked a little bit about the project. They were happy to give to us because it was just good to hear from us from the standpoint of, we were still, involved in ministry and involved in church. So it's always good to, hear back from people and people that you made connections with over time. So these people have given to us, it's freely given, and we're definitely thankful and grateful for those people. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so our projection. All right, so let's look at the project schedule, target dates, and our plans to move forward. So we have our next steps. So the trees will need to be removed by winter 2022, and the seeding will begin in spring 2022. All right, so project completion, it will be weather dependent, but we are expecting a good stand of grass in the fall of 2022. Then our last thing is the pending items, which is approval needed before the contractor can start the work. All right, so we want to talk a little bit about the space. So again, the space that we're looking to clear is around 0.5 acres. This is located right behind the shed. So if you go to the shed and you take a slight curve to the right, that is the 0.5 acres. So we also wanted to point out that there are a lot of rotting and dead trees. As you can see on the right, there are a lot of few trees that are leaning, and this could be, a potential hazard, especially to the cemetery, as it's close to the cemetery. So we figured, hey, also we're providing a green space, but also we want to try to knock out anything, that could be a hazard to the cemetery before it happens. So we figured this would be a good idea to go ahead and cut down those trees as well. All right, so we're going to go to some questions and concerns.
So this is our quick rapid fire question. So we're just going to be going through a few questions. We know we can't cover all the questions that people may have, but we're just going to try to answer these questions as quickly as possible. And then you'll be able to reach out to us if you have additional questions. But one of the first questions, why do we really need this? And I believe that we do. We talked about our 40% scenarios. And looking at that, we feel that the church does get full on certain events. It might not be on a regular Sunday service, but during those large events, our church can get packed, and we want to be able to accommodate for that. We really want to be able to, help people to have a safe place to worship and everything. And the second question, how will this benefit the church? We believe that it will benefit the church because it will help the church to meet its capacity. We believe that the church will become more valuable as it's able to host weddings and funerals, at a higher level. So we believe that will actually benefit the church as well. And I'll hand the next question over.
So why not? All right, so we do know that inflation does take place, and some of the things that you might get from businesses might not stay the same. So we've been given a really good quote, and also with that, it's part of the season where there's going to be a lot cheaper prices during the winter, especially with all the debris gone. And again, we've already done a lot of the work by clearing the land, by doing a lot of raking. So this would be the opportune time now to go ahead and try to complete this project. I'll go ahead and go to the next question.
Is there any obligation to the donors? This is not actually the state grant or anything like that. This is just an acceptable fundraiser that we're doing. So there is no obligation to the donors.
All right, and next question is, how can I help? So if you feel like you can give any, of your talents or gifts, if you want to donate in any way that you see fit. So obviously, if you have any time that you like to give to us and give to this project, we would definitely appreciate it. So, want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just if you want to actually join a committee, or if you feel like you have a skill base that we haven't considered, may not know about, any way you can contribute in that way as well would be helpful. So that's how you can help. If you have, keep in contact if you have any additional questions. Of course, I'm Darren. This is my brother Brian. So you can always reach out to us. You can reach us by email at sharonweems@outlook.com. If you just see us, you can feel free to ask us any questions that you have about this project. That's going to conclude our presentation. We hope that everyone has a blessed day, and